Let's bring in Sean Grande, voice of the Celtics. He joins us here on the night show. Sean Grande, how are you today, sir?
Joe, I missed the beginning of the show. How were you? Are you good with this or no?
Nope.
I kind of missed the start.
Yeah, it's okay. I am not fine with it.
I know you're. Trust me, we've all heard it. It's already gone super viral, and I think, as I said to our friend in common, Lucy, earlier today, and the only other appearance I dared do today on Nesson, that it feels like we're fortunate that Celtic fans aren't all walking around with batting helmets today.
I really just kind of think Jaylen Brown. Did they have to do this? I guess, Sean, is what I'm asking you. And in the end, like I asked you this question a week ago. I said, did the Celtics really want Giannis, or do they really want to move on from Jaylen Brown? And I feel like in the end, they did want to move on from Jaylen Brown.
I think it's clear. I wonder when the stories are written, weeks from now, months from now, years from now, and all the little blanks get filled in. I wonder if something even more dramatically changed in the last couple of weeks, because I was very much of the opinion that it was clear that the market, I was laughing at the people that were saying the Celtics don't respect Jaylen Brown, when it was clearly the market and the rest of the league that didn't respect Jaylen Brown, because these offers were not going to be good enough. And Brad Stevens made a decision, and that's his job to make the decision, because he knows a lot more than us. And one of the things that I'm sure maybe it hasn't come up tonight, is that Brad Stevens hasn't spoken, Joe Mazzulla hasn't spoken, we know Jayson Tatum hasn't spoken, and if you don't speak, that's your right to take the high road or do that. But that means everybody else's narrative is going to be all everyone has to chew on over and over again. And so does this, I'm not going to pretend it doesn't feel bad or look bad today, because obviously it does. And you know, Joe, that because you're in touch with people, you're talking to people every night, the same Celtics constituency I hear from, I didn't feel people were going to be happy if the Giannis deal got made. I thought people would have been won over eventually to it. But once that was clearly not acceptable to a lot of people, nothing was going to be. So to me, it almost didn't matter any of these offers, which included a player that you weren't crazy about or draft picks. No trade for Jaylen Brown was going to be received well. And this, because it's Philadelphia, because it's a player that's older than we thought, because it's not Giannis, obviously it's the reception of this news is as bad as we thought it was going to be.
Going to the 76ers, I don't think helps. And, we know his comments on Joel Embiid in the past, but, going to the 76ers, I just look at this whole thing and I it's still hard to process, but was this an ownership move, or was it really about what happens on the basketball court?
I think that answer, here we are, where I heard you reference the Devers trade, and I remember having to break that to my son, and thinking at the time, I knew there were issues with Devers, right? And everyone that follows the Red Sox knew that, and it went well for the Red Sox. But the question was, what was going to happen a year from now, a year or 2 years after the Devers trade? Where was that money going to go? Was it going to be reallocated? We're not going to have a lot of the answers to this question until those draft picks come through, until if Paul George ends up being moved in a year when he's on the last year of his deal. So many things we don't know. But what we do know is that, number one, it's not going to be received well, and number two, unless it is explained, and there's no obligation to come out and explain it if you don't feel like you have to, the perception of new ownership is going to have to bear the brunt of it. And if that's the price they have to pay, I'm sure Bill Chisholm's willing to pay it to have this be successful down the road. But perception-wise, it looks bad.
How do you feel about the trade overall, Paul George, who's old? I'm sure you know all the guys.
Objection, Your Honor, leading question.
Well, let's be honest. This guy does his podcast. He had PED issues. Everyone he's traded for has been a star, right? Look at SGA right now. SGA. I'm just looking at it as like Paul George is the guy that is the return in all this, and I know it's because of the contract and he's got the option and all that. Like the deal, Sean, the deal stinks. I'm sorry, it stinks. It's smelly. It's awful.
Well, why would I don't think any Celtic fan, and by the way, if you ask Brad Stevens right now, which you're not going to be allowed to do, and you're not going to hear anything from Brad until everything's official next week, I think he knew the second that the button got pushed and the fax got sent, he knew this was not going to be received well. I mean, that's pretty clear. I think that Celtic fans who don't want to hear, well, rebuild or things like that, for people who are concerned about staying near the middle, and the inability to acquire draft picks, which I'll get to in a second. The Celtics here, to whatever degree they've downgraded from Jaylen Brown to Paul George, I don't know what number that is. Remember, you're getting Jayson Tatum back. Remember, you still have Derek White and Peyton Pritchard, and now you have Kata and Mitchell Robinson as your two centers. This is not going to be a team that drops to the bottom of the Eastern Conference or even to the middle of the Eastern Conference. So from a basketball standpoint, you're going to stay in that mid-range for this year. What did Brad Stevens say? I think we need Talmudic study now to comb through the Brad Stevens press conference, right? The postseason presser. When he said this is not a championship team right now, did he think this could be a championship team next year, as is, with Jaylen Brown coming back? And obviously the answer to that question is no. Obviously the Celtics are better off if they can get another year to reset the rules with the taxes in the second apron and the aprons. Of course that's true. Do the draft picks, what do they end up actually being? We'll see. But again, you've got to be on the forefront of this. There's nothing to defend. You're sitting here saying, I'm put in this position of, hey, defend this trade. I can't defend it because I believed that Jaylen Brown could come back. Are we going to find out something later that put all those rumors and all the reports that there was, you can't put the toothpaste back in the tube and Jaylen Brown can't go back to the Celtics? I was scoffing at those. I thought those were ridiculous. I thought it was absurd even until this morning to say, what do you mean Jaylen Brown can't come back to the Celtics? What do you mean you can't do this a year from now or even 2 years from now? So what if the Jaylen Brown wasn't going to be happy if he didn't get the extension for $70 million a year, which obviously wasn't going to happen? My view of that was, so what? And to make this move, if you're Brad Stevens ownership, you're saying, we don't care how it looks today. We think it was going to play out this way, and now we'll never know, but we believe we're going to be better off 2 years from now, and that's what we're all going to find out.
All right, Sean Grande joining us here on 98.5 The Sports Hub. I'll get to the Mitchell Robinson, Michael Conley stuff later. Is there a chance with this move now happening with the Celtics down the line they could be in this situation with Jayson Tatum and his max contract extension?
Of course they could, but I think you're going to make that decision separately. I think one of the things, big picture, was you were asking yourself, and obviously this was another decision that Brad and the front office made, was in the current climate with the aprons being what they are, could you have two supermax players that essentially replicate themselves at their position? Remember this, no team, how far back do you have to go to find a championship team like the Celtics 2 years ago where their two best players were wings that won the title? I'll give you time to think about it. Play the Jeopardy music. It hasn't happened. This was a unicorn team 2 years ago. Now, with the rules, how are you going to add elite players in the backcourt and, more importantly, up front? How are you going to add those players if you didn't have draft picks and you had no high salaries that you could add to a team that already had two max players? That decision clearly had been made. I was skeptical as to whether or not you could do it, but obviously that decision had been made, and once you make it, you might as well go all in. I certainly, as much as this feels like 50 cents on the dollar, don't think for a second the Celtics weren't aware of it being 50 cents on the dollar. The feeling was understand this, for Brad Stevens to make this move, the feeling was in that room that this was the best they were ever going to do. Now, we can all argue that, debate that, and say something might have changed down the road, but obviously the feeling was, we're making a Jaylen Brown trade. We have canvassed the league. All the reports, right? Everybody said they've canvassed the league. They've talked to everybody. This was clearly, sad as it may be, the best you were going to do. By the way, I feel terrible for Paul George, who is a really good player now. Obviously, outplayed Jaylen in the playoff series for whatever that's worth. He's had a really good career, and I feel bad for Paul George. I feel bad for Mitchell Robinson and Mike Conley today because they're just coming in. They're just showing up on their new home, on the worst possible day.
We got Skaz.
Yeah, I guess, the best possible deal they could have got for Jaylen is what we're all led to believe, what, obviously we're going to be, told and sold. But how is a Celtics fan supposed to see what Walker Kessler goes for, or Kawhi, or you name it, these other guys, and they're going for more than Jaylen Brown, and he has to go to Philly. He has to go to a team that beat you in the greatest collapse in Celtics playoff history. I'm trying to rationalize it any way I can, Sean, and I can't.
Well, no, I don't think you're going to find anybody that can, which is why I'm not going to try, because that would be ridiculous to do on a day like this. I'm trying to put my head around the fact that on April 26th or 27th, ponder where you were in the world as a Celtics fan. You were up 3-1. You were taunting the Sixer fans in their building, going up 3-1. The Knicks were life and death in the first round with Atlanta. The last 7, 8, 9, 10 weeks, inconceivable at that moment that you would lose the 3-1 lead, that the Knicks would essentially not lose another game and win the championship, and that Jaylen Brown would end up going to the Sixers. So there are no rationales or no answers for things that make fans feel especially bad today. That it's Philadelphia. How are you going to feel if LeBron goes to Philly now to play with Jaylen Brown, to take a shot down there? It's going to feel like insult to injury. But I'll say this. It can't be in Brad we trust every day for the last 5 years, and then suddenly, with a move that doesn't look great on paper, everyone just completely turns on everything he's done. We all were I was made to look stupid for 82 games last year by thinking that the Celtics could not be a competitive team in the regular season, and I was made to look foolish. Jaylen Brown made a lot of people look foolish last year. Maybe a year or two from now, we're going to all say, oh my God, everybody was jumping off a bridge on July 1st when they traded Jaylen Brown. But I think the instant reaction is the right one to have. And I think my thing is that there are people pushing back. I don't know if they're pushing back on you guys. Because I heard you say, Joe, earlier about Jaylen getting his number retired. And there are some, I will hold my language, people out there arguing about Jaylen getting his number up. Are you insane? If Jaylen's number doesn't go up, about 8 of them that are already up there have to come down. This was a great Celtic. So let's not get into the idea of just trying to throw dirt on Jaylen Brown. I don't think a lot of people are doing that now, but it just seems like all the people that have been waiting to say bad stuff about Jaylen, everybody's so angry today, they're using this as an excuse to do it. I don't think it's a day to just wave pom-poms and say, wow, what a great move this is going to be for the Celtics. I think it's a day to say this thing has happened. You had an extraordinary 9 years of these two guys together. You got your championship, and who knows what's going to happen next.
Yeah, I was going to ask you that before we let you go. And Skaz, by the way, go Skaz. Skaz has been great tonight because, I've been saying stuff and then he's just like, no, Joe. And it's just, the emotions are everywhere, Sean.
Obviously.
By the way, why shouldn't be in your feelings today?
Yeah.
This is what being a fan is about. My thing isn't don't be mad tonight. My thing is for the people that chose on talk shows or the talking head shows or whatever to choose to be negative about nonsense over the last 5 years when the Celtics have been by 15, 18 games the best team in the NBA, which, by the way, the reason the Celtics can't get involved in a lot of these trades and don't have a treasure trove of draft picks, funny what happens when you've been the best team for the last 10 years. You don't get good draft picks. The last top 12 pick the Celtics made was Jayson Tatum. It was 9 years ago. So eventually you have to get back in the high draft pick business. Even if you just want to trade them for other things or use them, you have to get back in that business. You can't exist being way above the second apron, as the Celtics were and were going to be, the way they were 2 years ago. And you can't be in business and be a contender in the future if you don't have assets or draft picks. And the Celtics, at the very least, bit the bullet and got those. But be mad today. Just don't be mad over the last 4 or 5 years for no reason when you had the best team.
Yeah, and I think the question there about why are you rebuilding around Jayson Tatum in his prime and getting draft picks is another conversation we can have. But we're going to focus on the Celtics thing. But Jaylen Brown's his perspective on this whole thing, for the last however many years, months, weeks, whatever it's been, there has been this narrative that Jaylen Brown feels or was slighted by the Celtics. Fair, warranted, unwarranted, whatever, however people view it, that was a narrative that was out there. They made him the highest paid player in the history of the league. He won the finals MVP with the franchise. If Jaylen Brown was ever going to feel disrespected by the Celtics, wouldn't it be today? And how do other players view what the Celtics have now done with Isaiah Thomas and Jaylen Brown and guys like this? Jaylen Brown is very outspoken, as we know, the streams, the tweets, everything. When do you think we hear from Jaylen Brown, and how much of a high road? Because I think he will, knowing Jaylen Brown, but what do you think that first message from Jaylen is going to be like?
It's going to be interesting, right? Because I don't know the answer, and I never bought into the narrative that the Celtics somehow disrespected Jaylen Brown was always absurd. And I think what we don't know, among the many, many, many things we don't know, the reports are out there today. Jaylen Brown never asked for a trade. But what we really don't know is if Jaylen is happy this whole thing happened or not. We don't know the answer to that. We don't know the truth. And whatever the real conversations were, remind everybody of this. Jaylen and Brad have been talking over the last couple of months. We don't know what those conversations were, and we never, ever will, most likely. So the degree to which Jaylen Brown did Giannis want to leave Milwaukee? Of course he did. He was trying to babyface it, right? And make it seem as if he didn't want to go. Of course he wanted to go. Did Jaylen Brown want to leave Boston? I don't think so. At some level, I didn't think so. I've started to wonder over the last 48, 72 hours if my view of that had been wrong, and maybe he wanted to go a little more than I thought. But Brad Stevens' job is to serve the franchise in the short run and the long run. So that's always going to be number one. But to the degree to which he was trying to serve Jaylen in this situation, I don't know if we'll ever really know, but I certainly wouldn't rule it out. And Isaiah Thomas was not only back with the franchise now, grateful for his time in Boston now. He was hurt when he left too because he didn't want to be traded at the time. But look at how Isaiah feels now about Brad Stevens, about the Celtics franchise, that he is now, again, a part of it, happy to be a part of it, all that. So, again, tonight is to feel your feelings. And I'm the last guy that's ever going to say don't feel them or don't be mad, or that's what being a fan is about. I just hope you were as joyful watching Jaylen for the 10 years as you are mad that the 10 years is now over.
Sean, thank you for your time. And I want to just ask you one more question before we let you go. I do think Jaylen Brown will get his number retired, absolutely. But where does he rank amongst, let's just use the last 25 years? I have him with Pierce. I don't know if he's past Pierce or was, they both were great in the community, right? One's a Hall of Famer, obviously. Maybe Jaylen didn't have enough more time to be here, but how do you look at it? And this isn't, Sean Grande said this or that. I'm just curious where Jaylen Brown ranks among maybe who we've seen since the last big three.
Don't worry. First of all, the aggregators will do whatever it is that they do. And a reminder, kids, aggregation has no victims, only volunteers. Always remember that. I think he's with Paul. I think you said the guys, Paul Pierce and Jayson Tatum. And I think Jayson and Jaylen are always going to be interlocked. If Jayson plays another 7 or 8 years here, this 9-year run of them together is always going to be the Jays. That's always going to be the era. I think the community stuff does bring it to another level, even though Paul Pierce had, 15 years here, and Jaylen only had 10. I think he is on that short list. I think it is. I just saw a couple of, I'm not going on social media tonight because it's going to be it's a bad place to be on a regular night, especially tonight. But the notion that Jaylen wouldn't have his number retired here is absolutely absurd because he was a great Celtic on the floor and for all the accolades that we already know about with the finals MVP and everything he did. 10th, by the way, on the Celtics all-time scoring list and higher than that on the Celtics all-time playoff scoring list, right? He was closing in on top five, past Bill Russell this year. All-time Celtics playoff scoring list. Ponder that for a second. But the off-the-court stuff combined, I'm not sure he is the elite of the elite when it comes to Celtics when you combine the work off the court, the work in the city, and the work on the floor. And that's what I always think of. I am grateful always for getting to be the voice of this franchise. But there are special things that really make you proud. Watching Jaylen and Jayson grow up to become the men they have become has been an exceptional part of this job the last 10 years, and that's what I will think about when I think of Jaylen.
He's Sean Grande, everybody. He's been doing his media tour today, and now you have the holiday weekend to have everybody ask you what's going on with the Celtics. What could be better? What could be better?
I think I got more texts than Shams today.
I believe it, and I was one of them. So I do appreciate reaching out, man. And hey, try to enjoy this. And I agree with you, man. I think Jaylen's going up there, and I'm going to celebrate Jaylen for what he did. I don't love the trade, but I'm going to see how it all plays out and see what Brad comes up with. I think he's not done cooking yet.
Hey, when your name goes up in the Radio Hall of Fame, when your number goes up there, they're going to play the first 10 minutes of tonight's show. You know that. So.
That's right. And what, are you going to be my inductor? Sean Grande. Yes, I knew him. He also worked at 1510 way back when. So, all right, Sean. Well, we that's how far we went back to 1510 The Zone.